Hi there, and welcome to another edition of The Future is Short, brought to you by the School of Visual Arts, MPS Live Action Short Film Department. And tonight we're going to chat with some very visual, spectacularly creative people, directors of photography. And we have, to my left, we have Eric Giovan, and then we have Rommel Genciana, and we have Inga Moren. All three terrific DPs, three that I've worked with as director, three who have done terrific, beautiful presentations of some of the short films that we've put together in the last couple of years. So we're going to talk a little DP stuff. And the first question I have is a simple one. You get scripts from commercial people, from clients, from agencies, and then you get scripts from students. Students don't have a lot of money, and it doesn't pay well. However, there must be some other residual benefits to making a student short film. Let's chat about what those might be.
Well, I enjoy the way first-time directors work. What are the things that even seasoned directors still struggle with? 180-degree line, screen direction, acting, and when you read a first-time screenwriter, you kind of see what's possible. They don't know what's impossible. So you'll get scripts that are a little bit more character-driven or bigger locations. And
a little more outrageous.
A little bit more outrageous, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Rommel about a lot of those things, and I think that another element is that, there's such an open canvas, the student, and I work really well with people that way, that are open-minded, and my nature is, I'm not one to really take over, but just to really collaborate and assist in trying to achieve their vision and sort of show them new things, and that can be a really good thing about the student area.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think there's an openness in their minds that lets you go one step further. Sometimes I have gotten scripts that, visually they could go to so many directions, and they are willing to go there with you and willing to give you that chance. They don't really have an idea what they're gonna get, so that's great, because that just gives you so much freedom to just kind of let things happen. It's a great thing that everybody's excited about this one thing, or this one shot that you wanna kind of discover with them how it's gonna come together.
In class, they're always asking me, how can I get these DPs excited? How can I get them interested? How can I get them to make my movie? I can't throw lots of dollars at them, so how can I get them to like my script? And I say, well, why don't you start by bringing them something visual that you can talk about, that you all can agree on? Do you like when they bring you tear sheets or refer to other movies or other visuals?
Yeah, I know I do. I always encourage them to, whether it's magazines or online, find something that really resonates to maybe different characters or scenes that you want to emulate. Because, words sometimes, well, a lot of times, especially in the visual areas, doesn't suffice.
Yeah, I think that I'll also always ask for visual references because, I see pictures when I read a script. The words are there, but the pictures are the first things that come to my mind. And I think it's a great way to get in their head because as first-time directors, they might not really know what they want. They think they have an idea of something, but when they get a visual reference, it's such a great point for both of us to kind of know where we need to go. So it's a great roadmap for that.
Yeah, and I think going back into the first question of why we want to do this is because whenever I'm on a film set, I'm always learning something. And as a director of photography, working with new directors that you've never worked with before, it's so much more fun because you have worked with other directors before and you guys have a bond and you guys have a series. I know this director likes to pre-pro. I know this director likes to storyboard everything. I know this director likes to keep it fluid and not worry about that. And I think when you work with first-time directors, that's kind of broken down. And I think that seeing how another person sees a movie, because I've seen Taxi Driver a million times, but a director will watch it in a different way than I will. And watching a movie together that I think I've seen a million times, I always learn something new about it. And how I can use that as execution to get his or her film made, or how it's shot, or how it's looked, is, I think, the biggest reward.
How about personality?
Yes.
You guys meet, they bring you stuff, they show you a script. You've got to like the script enough to warrant a meeting at least, and then they can explain their vision if they're good at that. But what about personality? Do you oftentimes get put off? Can you sense when it would not be a good experience?
I think for me, that's probably number two. It's very important for me to be able to work with somebody that that is patient, that is open, that is not very complicated. I mean, I can deal with a lot of personalities, but I think at the end of the day, you know that you're going to be with this person for a long time, a couple of days. So you want to make sure that time it's useful, and also you want to see that they have the passion for their project. I think like that for me is also very important. Like they're going to go the extra mile to make things happen.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think personality is very important, what she said. And I do get a sense, as to answer Bob's question, I do get a sense sort of right away in the first meeting as to, their vibe, their personality, where they want to take the film. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different directors, so it's definitely important that you find the right chemistry between cinematographer and director. I mean, on longer projects like features, it's almost like a marriage in a sense.
Or a partnership.
Yeah, exactly. And it's super important that you guys, develop this trust and you vibe correctly. And, I've worked with people in the past that have been so controlling that I think they were sort of afraid to trust in others. Luckily, it was a feature. It took me a while to kind of break through to this particular director, and then he started to trust me. And, my suggestions were not there to sort of overtake his vision, but to support it.
I think you put it right there. It's definitely the trust. The DP director is a very intimate relationship, or it's, the words on paper we have to put on screen in an aesthetic way, and blocking and, lighting and hair and makeup, costume, sound, everything that goes into it. Everything the director has to sign off on. I think what I look for is yes, they're passionate about it, that they've seen everything, but that they can also let go a little bit and trust that, you've hired the right people to get your job done, and that you and I together, we can work on getting the right film that we both want. Maybe that's even better than we thought we both could have,
I would imagine that one of the attractive parts of shooting short films with student directors or first-time directors is that they don't know it all, that they're not coming from a very stubborn point of view. They're going to look to you to, what do I do now? What would I do? How can I? What should I? And no, you set it up, and I'll sort of come with you. They're not going to walk in, I think, and tell you, camera goes here, A there, mark B there, and you find that?
I was just remembering an experience I had the last time I shot a project with a student director, and it was such a great experience because I love teaching other people stuff that I learn, and I think by teaching you also really learn it, and it stays in your head even more. But just that opportunity that you get to show somebody the things that and all the little tricks and the excitement in their faces that they're learning something. I think it's great. It's a great feeling, and I think that it even helps them a lot to just trust themselves. Kind of like you just give them that trust that, I know you don't know everything, but you know something, and I know that you're gonna go towards that direction. I think it's a great chemistry. It's a great place to be. When you're in a regular set, everything is so straightforward, and this is how it is. And it becomes kind of like in a family. It becomes, for me, it has my personal experience. We have become friends after, and we bond. We get great relationships out of it.
I think everything in filmmaking, from the PA who has to figure out how to find parking, to the director who has to figure out how all of this gets together, to the producer figuring out how to afford all of this, to the DP to get the right equipment, the right lenses, and put it right in the right frame. I don't want to say a director's going to come in and this is what we're going to do. I think it's more fluid than that. It's I'm still learning. Every time I'm on a film set, I'm always learning something new. I'm learning from people who are very seasoned, and they learn from me who's not as seasoned, and I learn from students seeing them learn as well.
Taking this a little further, this relationship with student directors, what happens when they say to you, speaking about lenses, Rommel, okay, what do you have in mind? That 50? Put that 50, he looks at that 50 and says, gee, I wanted that wider, or somehow I wanted that tighter. But you know that if you do it wide, it's going to mean another hour, or so, or, certainly more time because you see more stuff. Do you feel comfortable? Is it the student teaching the student director? Is it any different than disagreeing with an established director?
I don't think so. I think you're still working together. The first thing I do when I sit down with a director is, well, how many shots do you think this is going to be in? Like, this conversation can be done in 50 shots. It could be done in one single take. It could be done in 2 shot reverse shots. And what lens choices, I like to make those decisions before we get on set. Pretty much, the style of this movie is a zoom lens. The style of this movie is wide lensed or tighter lens or more claustrophobic, or those kinds of decisions are already made before. And on set, if you have those audibles that you're like, hey, I gotta have it in a wide, I gotta have it on this. Ultimately, as a director of photography, I serve the director and I serve the story. And I don't know how it's going to cut. I can say my opinion, but in the end, I serve the director.
Even if you think in your heart that he's going or she's going down the wrong road?
For me personally, when I'm saying that, I will have a conversation with them. That's what I always do, because I think the fact that they're their first-time directors, they're not keeping time. Hopefully they'll have a producer that will be there helping them, but sometimes what it has come to is like I also have to help them, guide them that way. So I just talk to them and explain them, this is what's gonna take. And, I think what I do with them is a lot of foreseeing, how we're gonna do this, like the next scene, how long it's gonna take. Remember, we have the next thing next, you have to like kind of put them in their head, like just the idea, and then they understand. It's because they don't know how long things take. They just think that it's gonna be okay. But then I think once you give an explanation, they're very good at like saying, you know what, I think you're right, or no, maybe we should just go halfway or whatever.
You find the push and shove, the pushback becomes an issue?
I don't think so. No, not at all. I think that's one of the things that's important to feel out in those initial meetings you have before you're hired, to get that, you get that feeling from each other. Even in sort of normal productions, I've struggled with really just trying to get a simple blocking, which seems to be like the hardest thing. And I'm like, and I don't know if it's like a misunderstanding of the definition of blocking. Like, I've had directors stand there and tell me, he's going to walk there, she's going to go there, then they're going to pick this up. I'm going to say, let's get the actors in and just do it like a play. So I try to guide them towards that while they're in the, in the space.
Well, that's interesting. So you all subscribe to having the physical blocking up front so you can see physical people and...
Absolutely, yeah. If I could maybe just speak about the lenses, I was just going to say that getting that blocking is important, because then we could see, what's our widest shot? Maybe it's a moving dolly shot, and I say, take a look at this, and been using the iPhone a lot, like the Artemis Director's Viewfinder, which they can see it. Mm-hmm. Oh, that looks great, okay. So we do that, and then I sort of step through the following setups, like, then we could go on a slightly tighter lens and go here and go here and go here.
Now, I've always, whatever reason, I don't know, but I've always resisted the viewfinder approach on location scouts and when we set up. It's just not organic enough for me. It's just whatever. And I think some directors will feel that way, and others are beholden to it. Just get down there and...
Right, and you say put down as organic, and what urgent is when you do it as a play, you realize that the storyboards that you drew 2 months ago may not fit this space because physically you can't knock down this wall, or physically we can't move these chairs, or like the actors performed it brilliantly and you don't need to cut around it, so let's keep it as a single shot. So there are those organic moments on set that happen, and it's just being able to ride the waves.
I will say that as a director who directs student directors to go out and direct their movies, I advise them to, above all costs, not to just do one take.
Right.
Only because I'm mostly unclear and unsure about their direction, so I'd love to have the editor have a few options. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we did on Yang's film, we got into a situation where we were shooting in a school and we had basically like a lot of scenes, as we all try to do, and fit them all in one day. And I thought we had 12 hours or even 10, but then the school said, well, you got to be out at 3. So there was this one quick scene we had to do in the hallway, and we just did it all in one take. We did it a couple of times, of course, but we just kind of had to bang it out and go with trying to make the
And
time.
more times than not, that scene will be good and good enough to get into the movie.
It worked
and,
really well, actually.
But I love to, that brings me to the question, how do you feel about student directors showing up or requesting 2 cameras?
Well, my quick answer to that, I think I usually, at least it's really necessary. For example, in our last project, we were shooting in water. Yes, we needed a GoPro. That's like our second camera. But sometimes I don't feel it should be necessary for first-time directors. Too much for them to handle. And they have so much going on that to try to concentrate into cameras personally for me, I think it will be more work for them. Yes, it might cover more angles, but
Those angles may not be lit as nicely,
Yeah,
et cetera, et cetera.
I think just going with one camera for the time's sake of this 3 days, just concentrating on one thing, focus on that, it goes by faster because then you have 2 cameras, you have to move them, it takes time.
Yeah, I haven't found that 2 cameras makes it faster. I always found that 2 cameras gives you more film, more options, but it doesn't make it any faster. What do you think, Rommel?
I think there should be 2 reasons why you do it. I think number 1 should be the aesthetic reasons that it is in that style. It is a verite style. You are going to break the line. You are going to have different sizes or the same size all the time, and the lighting is going to be a little off on one camera or the other, or that's just a look for it. And number 2 reason should be, I guess, like if it's going to be an explosion, or it's going to be like a baby crying, or it's going to be like a kid laughing, or like a baseball being hit. You get it in one shot. You want to have multiple cameras to get that same thing, just in case you may not have got it the first time. That one is a little soft. That's it.
Well, any stunt, obviously, you want.
Of course, stunts, right? But I think ultimately it should be about the aesthetic. It should be 1 camera because that's the style of it. Multiple cameras because that's the style of it.
I use 2 cameras a lot, and because I've gotten into that habit, but I can see where with, unseasoned directors, it could give you a problem, especially when they say, well, let's put the one all the way over there, and you say, yeah, but look at the lighting. It really, does not. Now, speaking about lighting, it seems to me that your jobs in the last few years has been to make things look like nobody really gave a damn. That make things look like the low tech. Has that been your experience, that you've been asked to come up with a look that's from the gutter?
I feel like, if it's supposed to be handheld and verite, because it's visceral, that makes sense. If it's a lot of zooms and it's, an homage to the 1970s when they over-zoomed a lot, that works. I recently just shot a little short with actually one of the alumni here, Eric Penikoff, and a short film.
Which, by the way, I must say is really quite wonderful.
And we had done thing after the pod for your class, and we did an ABCs of Death, and it was like a Mexican standoff kind of a thing. And like myself, aesthetically, didn't find the lighting to be all that great, but it was because of the homage to like 1970s horror films with like sources that are directly into the actors' faces with like really deep reds, oversaturation. It's not necessarily my style.
Yellows and oranges.
All in
everything
oranges.
in.
Yeah.
There is form following function,
Like, I think for me, I think like once I read the story, I get a pretty clear idea of how it's supposed to feel. Like, how you're saying, you read the script and you get an idea. But I'm a lot into experimenting and just trying to like, I wouldn't say like breaking rules or anything like that, but just trying to bring a new idea to something that has already been formed. So I'm more interested in maybe something that needs to be shot straight on, like, very uplit, making it the other way. just because I get the opportunity to do it this way, because it's a student film. Why
I
not?
will never forget you, Inga, as one of my students early on, one of my really brilliant students who made the most abstract movie yet that I've had in all the years teaching, because I still to this day don't know I have an idea about what it was about, but it was really beautifully crafted and beautifully shot. Is that the kind of movie that you?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, like as I look at my stuff, I can see that something keeps repeating. So I do feel like somewhere in there, something of me is there, and I just feel like I keep using the aesthetic, I guess we can call it, and the aesthetic is growing, and it can be, it can become something that is formal, but I know that I will never shoot very straight on. I just know that for myself.
You've got to find something that's controversial somewhere.
So I guess that's my personality, or like what I'm interested in shooting. But I can also do the straight on, but even the straight on, nothing is right or wrong. There's beautiful things in there. Like, when we're talking about Mad Men, I mean, there's some things that are just beautiful. It's like a photograph. I mean, I see in pictures, and I think like sometimes I want to bring the still pictures that I take, I want to bring them into moving form. So that was kind of like
I was one of the Mad Men. It wasn't that beautiful. It really was not that beautiful. It was pretty
looks beautiful now.
nasty. Let's talk budget. Mm-hmm. These young people show up, they give you a script, you like them, and their sincerity and their passion, but they don't have a whole lot of money. Where do we go from there?
It's problem solving and inventiveness, I think. I mean, and that's where we get to. That's also one of the pleasures of working with these student films with low budget, is that you come up with new ideas, figure out a new way to do things. For the pod of last year's thing, we needed, like, the director wanted a very shaky look, and I was going to get like a tango head. I couldn't get anything like that. So we took rubber tubing and made a big giant shock mount and put the camera in the middle of it, and we just knocked the camera around to get that shaky look. It was a cheaper alternative for it, and I can use that someplace else.
You could also patent that, man.
And I think you can get those things from it. I mean, realistically, if you have no money, you shouldn't be doing a movie on a submarine, or if you are, it's a room in a submarine, and it's in a dark.
If you have no money, you shouldn't draw a helicopter in your movie.
Right. You gotta figure out how to afford that movie first.
What do you think?
I mean, for me, I'm used to working on very, you could say, low budget, and so maybe it's just a blessing in disguise, because I don't feel that money necessarily equates quality, like Rommel's saying. You're forced to be resourceful, and then there's some amazing creativity that can really come out of that. So I wouldn't let money try to hinder you, but just know like what kind of limitations it can cause. That's being one part of it. The other part is that you have to have some realistic expectations. With sometimes it's they expect things to be fast, quick, and cheap. And it's usually just, what do they say, 2 out of the 3?
Right, is that little triangle? You have time, money, and creativity?
Yeah.
You can only have 2?
So.
But I think for me, I hope they'll have a really good producer, first. And second, I think the fact that you don't have money actually makes things simpler. And I like that. I think when things are simple, you can create so many great things when you're not overcomplicating yourself with other things, which is great. Once you have the money, you can go that extra step. But I think just for a process for a first-time director, for me, I guess it's just the fact that, as you guys said before, it just forces you to think in reality, and think of things that you have done before that could work for this specific time. And in a way, it just keeps it real, And I think if you can take that to the next project that you have a lot of money.
Keeps it real, and it keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
It keeps it inventive. You find new ways, and it keeps it, I think, honest. You know what? I can't afford. We can't afford that. This production can't afford that shot. So let's think of an alternative. Let's move on. And we can't get blood from a
No
rock.
helicopters.
Yeah, right. It doesn't mean the other shot is better just because you have a 50-foot technical crane.
Yeah, and you could also, production design, I think I think most students forget that there's a production designer on a set, and like that's more than half of the image. It's like I can put lighting, I can put whatever, but if it doesn't look like the 1950s, it's not going to be the 1950s. And if you don't have the money to do a period piece, you have to just location scout a place that looks that old,
Right.
you know, and actually shoot there. So it forces you to be more intense.
It's a good point. All of your most beautiful lighting in the world doesn't make the actor any better.
Yeah.
You know, the actor's got to be good. He's got to have good words. He's got to have good direction, and he's got to have a good cup of coffee that morning, because so much of what we do is complimentary anyway, in many ways. Now, the final question: how about film? Has anybody shot film recently?
I have.
You have.
Yeah. In April on 16 black and white, and then last fall I shot a feature on 35 in Europe.
Wow,
Awesome.
good for you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't gone near film in 3 years.
I wish. I want to. I want to be able to light something and not have 50 people on a monitor that's uncalibrated giving their opinions about how dark it is or how light it is or how
Great point.
whatever. It's just like, well, I know how it's going to look like.
Yeah, I love
know,
that, you know, like when we talk about film, the fact that film actually taught you to know, learn, without seeing, like to trust yourself. And I think, even though I haven't shot film in a while, I still shoot still photography and film, always. And I love that feeling. And the fact that where it puts you in a different frame of mind. And I try to take that when I'm shooting digital as well. Just, I don't need to see, I know what I'm getting. Just trust that at the end of the day, what you're seeing here will translate.
For me, it's always been organic. For me, it's like the analogy of reading a book. I tried e-books, but I have to hold that book in my hand when I get into the middle of it. And the same thing with film. There's just something that's organic and, about forming relationships that somehow digital does not approach. Digital is almost like it keeps you honest. I want to thank Inga Moren and Rommel Genciana and Eric Giovan, three wonderfully talented DPs, and for sharing some ideas with us today. And we'll see you and talk to you soon in another edition of The Future is Short.